Okay, we're on. Welcome everyone to the Visionaries Kiss podcast. I'm Brian Jacobson here, and today we're going to be all about mindset, attitude, and future visions. And I have a special guest with us here today, and that will be Harry Grech. Harry Grech is a mixed martial artist, and he's also a master in the Kimura, and he teaches the Kimura, but he's also just about to have some fights going on. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Harry Grech here. We had some problems before with sound. Let's see if we can get him on. Let's see if it's possible to get some sound on him here. No problem. No problem. We got to have some sound on, man. Otherwise, this meeting here is going to have a long...
I can hear you.
Yes, there we go. Good to have you on the show, Harry. You already introduced, man. So I want to hear a little bit about, you probably didn't hear me say that. So I mentioned that you are a mixed martial artist.
Correct.
Okay. And do you have a fight coming up? What's going on for you? And yeah, just share a little bit about what's going on and where you're at right now, actually.
Where am I in the world right now?
Uh-huh.
I am in Sydney, Australia. Yes, I do have a fight coming up. It will be my professional debut. So that's going to be in about 5 weeks, so March 20th.
March 20th. So everyone listening here, mark that date down. And where can we watch that if we want to see you?
You can, I'm not actually too sure what it's like, what its streaming services are. I don't know too much. I haven't asked them the questions, but it will be live for those that are in Sydney. Can check it out at it's a place called Punch Bowl. That's where it will be. But in terms of online streaming, there'll be videos I'll release of my fight, post-fight, if you can't make it anyway. So
okay, well, we're just going to put it in a description below. So if everyone want to watch a replay, or if you come up with that link later on, I'll put it in the description below so people can join you.
Sure.
Great. And Harry, how are you? Long time no see, huh?
Long time indeed. I'm great. Just getting better, focusing on self-improvement, and the journey. This is a new stage in my life, fighting mixed martial arts. So I've been competing for a long time at jiu-jitsu. Now it's time to step it up and fight.
Awesome. Well, just to inform people, actually, I know Harry from Good Trip back in the day. Met up in Iceland, had a good time there. I noticed right away you have a really good ground game. I didn't know anything about you at the time, right? So it was a good surprise. But what I want to focus on in this talk here is more about the mindset and how you work with things. I know you also had teachings from a guy in Japan that was, with you a little while, and you're really obsessed with this martial arts. I know you are working very hard daily. I know some of your philosophy on that a man, if he has, he has to train his body, he has to learn to use his energy well, have a healthy state of mind and body. So will you share a little bit of, your insights and the mindset that you approach your training with, and what's going on when you are, working?
Sure. So for me, philosophy has always played a big role in my life decisions. When I was about 17 years old, I came across the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, and Stoicism in general basically says that one should live simply. Also came across a guy named Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a great philosopher, who would always really describe in detail how strong man was and how happy above all man was when he was living in sync with nature. So for me, the biggest driving force for me to do what I do is the fact that when I get in there and I fight and I compete against another person, that is as raw and as real as life gets. I am testing my abilities against another person who has also trained his body up. And it's a chess game. Who's got the better moves? Who's going to trump who today? And it makes me feel alive. I like the fact that I can go to bed tired and sore and do it all again the next day.
That sounds
So
great. I like that you find what you love about it as well. I think that's an important ingredient. I mean, it can be really tough on the body to get a beating, right? I mean, it's not always you're winning, or how is it going?
that's right. It doesn't always go your way, but when it doesn't, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, you do learn from it if you allow yourself to. Because these your opponents, if you lose, pinpoint your weaknesses. Whereas when you win, your winners don't. You're able to beat them with your moves that happen to work at the time. But when you lose, it's like, you examine it and you keep an open mind. You don't get all sour about it. You realize, hey, I need to work on these things. So losing isn't all that bad either.
Okay.
No real loss when you're improving yourself. It's all a curve of defeat and victory, and they all work together,
That
make you
sounds
better.
interesting. I like that. So it's an approach of always just improving yourself. As you also started out with the meeting here, you're improving yourself. So with Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism, huh? It's quite interesting philosophy he has going on. It's very practical and actionable philosophy. So when he says that you should keep life simple, in what way do you apply that to your training? But also, how do you apply that, in action?
A good question. So I like to go overseas for training trips. Uh, the primary reason is I'm alone there, and I like to be alone because I don't have friends contacting me. I don't have obligations that I have back home. It is just me and the gym that I'm training at. So I would literally just eat, sleep, and train. And I'll
Yes.
never forget that the words of Marcus Aurelius in the Meditations when he said to be happy with a plank bed and a hide for covering. And this was a Roman emperor speaking of sleeping on plank beds and just a basic covering of a hide of an animal. He says
Yes.
to be content with that um, is a show of a strong mind and someone that isn't flustered with material things and
And also
other
not
garbage.
seeking out pleasures, right? He's not in the need of always having to, surround himself with lots of food or women,
Mm,
so to speak, or whatever an emperor actually has access to, right? Because he was kind of having access to the world at what we all imagine. Yeah.
he had people forget that it's not like the president of the United States
Yep.
who is still under the law. The Roman emperor was never under the law. He could literally, like Nero and Tiberius, Caligula, a lot of the emperors would go around and do all sorts of things that, by today's standards, or even by their standards, was considered really bad.
Yep.
Nero would slit the throats of people just because he wanted to, and
Yep.
he could get away with it. So it's interesting. I think people are quick to judge who is a bad emperor. Yet I think there are most people I wouldn't want to have absolute power that the emperors had, because I think if you get on the wrong side of anybody in the general public and he or she had that power, it would be game over for you potentially.
Sure. I get where you want to go with that. So I want to maintain the focus on the simplicity. So when you're down training and you say train, eat, sleep, repeat. I heard this sentence before. Tyson Fury, he likes that. But Tyson
Yeah.
Fury, he actually had some mental health issues when he had everything, and he did not achieve the clarity of mind that you talked about with Marcus Aurelius. So I want to keep that mindset that you have to stay on target and not let yourself be weighed by distractions and whatnot comes along.
Yeah. How do I do that?
I heard you had an injury coming up. How did you handle it? Where do you find that motivation to proceed?
I turned my attention elsewhere. When I injured my leg, I made it my focus to learn another language. I focused on Japanese.
Uh-huh.
I was unable to leave my bed for 2 weeks.
Yep.
The pain was too much, and I couldn't step on the mats for at least 8, 9 months. So I figured I'd study Japanese. I'd get I set a target for how much Japanese I could possibly, reasonably learn in 8 months.
Uh-huh.
So I turned my attention to that until my body was able for me to step on the mats and train again. But even with the injuries, it gave me clarity. Where am I at this moment?
Uh-huh.
Um, and my age and how much time do I have left to become a world champion and do what I have to do. And it was very confronting.
Good.
Um, but I still kept things simple. I mean,
Yes.
I don't drink, I don't party, I don't drugs, I don't do practically anything which I deem at least as something that would not progress me either spiritually, mentally, or
Yeah.
physically. I don't do
Let's
those
share that
things.
a little bit with people. That's interesting. So you mentioned alcohol, you mentioned partying in a sense, yeah.
Yeah,
So
in
let's.
a sense, exactly, in a sense, because we are social creatures. I'm not talking about hanging out with your friends. To me, the greatest dreams I have are when I dream of these vivid dreams of being in a little village by a fire and chatting with all your friends. Nothing is more satisfying than that.
Yeah.
But yes,
Or
it's
laying in the
small.
ice, huh? Go for a swim or chase hurricanes, huh?
Exactly. But I think, yeah, that to me is an element of progression in a social sense, at least. But I don't think it partying, clubbing, modern day style of partying is quite the same as that. Especially seeing as you can't talk in the nightclubs, it's you're under the influence of all sorts of things. I just think it's different, personally.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Personally, I also enjoy actually to have conversations like these, meeting up with people and actually getting in touch with each other, not trying to go away from the emotions with alcohol or stimulants, what you have not. But what do you think about, because you're in good shape, clearly I can tell. And so what about coffee? How do you handle it? Is there something, that you would advise people? If someone here might be interested in actually doing martial arts, is there some things that you've noticed this helps and whatnot?
So in regards to coffee, firstly, I've never actually had a coffee.
Ever?
So no, I've never had a coffee. Um, but I do have caffeine powders. I just never really got into the coffee thing. As for advising people, what do you mean exactly? Like their first step to take that
Well,
journey, or?
actually, so a lot of people that I've met when they want to start working out, they are all into the supplements. What should I eat? What things can I take in? And the industry of supplements is like a big chaotic market as we speak, right? Everyone is selling the best product and whatnot. So where to start as a martial artist with food, with cleanliness that keeps your energy high. You mentioned alcohol. Don't go to that route. I agree with that. Alcohol is limits a lot of our ability to actually perform well.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Alcohol. I remember reading Henry David Thoreau's Walden, and I believe he said along the lines of, "There is no beverage for a wise man other than water." So I just tend to drink water and lots of it. Um,
Huh.
if I'm going to drink something else, I'll drink a freshly squeezed juice, vegetable juice, primarily greens based. But in terms of eating, I know everyone's got their counter opinions. You've got the carnivore diet, the vegan diet. There's so many people saying so many different things. But in my opinion, I think the best diet that works for me, at least, is primarily vegetarian based, with
Uh-huh.
maybe 1 or 2 days a week where you can have a meal with meat.
Okay.
Um,
Noted.
I just don't think you should be eating it every day.
Uh-huh.
Um, I don't drink soft drinks at all. So I think that's just wasted calories and the sugar you don't need. Drink water instead.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean, you don't need to be too hardcore. Just basically, if it's in a packet, that probably isn't too good for you. If
Yeah.
it is grown naturally, it's a good start.
Good.
And then you get down the debate of where was it grown and what pesticides were used, et cetera, et cetera. And that's, I guess, for you to look into yourself when you're purchasing a product. But basically, keep as natural as possible.
Yeah,
And
and simple as well, right? With the pesticides, if the bees and all the animals don't want to eat it, it might mean that we also shouldn't eat it. Yeah.
yes,
Okay, very good. And that's also simple advice. I like that. So check in with yourself. Keep it mainly to healthy vegetables that can grow, that you see is alive actually. And if it's packed in too much, might be filled with a lot of unnecessary calories like sugar or
yeah. So I mean, I have protein powders. I do, but
uh-huh,
it's a vegan protein. It's a pea protein. I
uh-huh,
find that it sits better than a whey protein ever did. I
yeah.
never liked whey really. It always just didn't settle well with me, and I find this vegan proteins do,
Okay.
and I have one of those every day. I don't really supplement much else. I take zinc tablets and magnesium powder, so high dose magnesium powder and zinc.
Helps with the relaxation. Do you take it just before bed or when is it?
I do, yeah. Right before bed, I'll have a drink of high dose of magnesium and zinc tablet, and that's me. I don't go too hardcore on the supplements. Zinc, magnesium, and a protein powder, vegan protein powder. That's all I have.
That's very good. Very good. So I think we covered pretty much some of the mindset you have for your training there. I know you work hard. You work your ass off when you're training. I can tell some results.
I I, I do, but it's very important that people make the distinction between working hard and working smart. You
Uh-huh.
can train your ass off, right? But you may make only little progress because when you train hard, when you're in the gym and you're fighting a training partner, you're running on automatic mode 99% of the time, unless you consciously decide otherwise. So if I was to fight someone right now, if someone comes in through the door, I would automatically do what I already know. There's no way I would stop and say, why don't I try a roundhouse kick to the head? Something that I don't normally do.
Uh-huh.
But if I take that mindset and training, I will add that skill to my repertoire. And that is the smartest way to train. You can get some very big, tough, fit guys who you see just don't get better.
Yeah.
They're at a certain mark, but because which might be pretty high, but because they only train hard, they don't actually make much progress. It's very slow. Their body will automatically start making connections, but it won't consciously make those connections.
They won't
Whereas
start
if you
learning Japanese if they suddenly had that opportunity.
yes,
That's a
whereas
good
I
point
like to
here. I
put
like it.
myself in, yeah, I put myself into situations which I wouldn't want to be in a real situation. I put myself in those positions in training.
So can you just let's have an example that all keeping things visual is always a good help. So standard, I know you do bench pressing, you do heavy weights, yeah, for also attaining, the grappling muscles and whatnot. So how do you introduce an element of surprise? Is that what we're talking? An element of conscious decision where you go like, hey, what about that? How do you reach? How do you implement it?
In terms of jujitsu, in terms of weightlifting, yeah, weightlifting there's not really too much to it.
Okay.
But in terms of jujitsu, for instance, if I want to work a triangle choke,
Yeah.
right, and let's say my triangle choke is very bad, I will go with someone who's not too good, experienced on the mats, a beginner, and I will first try to get my move on him. I might not even be able to get it on him, but eventually I will because he's not a killer. And
Okay.
then I'll get it on the next person I see in the class, which is better than him, until you're suddenly getting it on black belts.
Yes, I get
So
you.
that is my
Absolutely.
approach in training. It's not always about finding the best, the toughest guys in the gym. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. You find those who aren't too experienced.
Yeah,
You
so you
practice
can
and you
also
move.
get the movements in, right? Because repetition of movement, repetition of going through those, because jiu-jitsu is a system, right? You start with how do I get past the legs? How do I stop him from being able to attack me, get it to the, or actually get to the ground first, past the legs. They are dangerous.
Exactly.
You move that method in. So you have, the more you practice that, the more you get familiar with those situations with someone who's not as knowledgeable or that good. That keeps.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like going. It's literally chess. It's called physical chess, and it's such a beautiful comparison because it's so true. I am going to present you with a guard pass to pass your legs.
Yeah.
If you do not have the answer to it, then I pass. If you
Uh-huh.
do, I don't pass. It's
Yeah.
simple as that. If I put you in an armbar or a choke, you either do or do not have the answer to that. And
Yes.
it continues until somebody eventually doesn't have an answer, and it's checkmate.
Very
That's
good.
jujitsu.
That's a good way of putting it. So, okay. So the element of surprise or the element of conscious decision, um, that happens when you first have mastered something. You need to master something first before you start to add, additional. I'm just trying to put myself into the situation. I'm practicing jujitsu. I'm practicing some moves that I've been given, right, to pass, to move on, and I want to do a choke. So is that the element of conscious decision that you want to try out something new here? When is that happening? Does that come with training?
Yes, if I understand you properly, making those decisions during training, which is both. It's difficult for us to do as humans because we like to leave the mat, leave training, thinking, yes, I got that guy, I got him with that submission,
Uh-huh.
right? But it's actually better to leave saying, I didn't get that move 20 times, but I tried 20 times,
Uh-huh.
a move that I'm clearly not good at. Otherwise, it would have worked the first time.
Uh-huh.
And then you'll realize that soon that move is always working. So you just have to literally try to put your ego aside and basically, prepare to not submit somebody or get anybody in a certain move because it's not a good move for you at that given time, but it will be soon. So when I was in New York, they do all of their rolling, which is sparring, basically when you train with each other, when it's live rolling.
Uh-huh.
We do it for positions. So we'll do a position like I'm on mount or you're on my back, because
Uh-huh.
these positions are where the match is either won or lost, depending on which position you're in. If I'm on your back, then
Uh-huh.
I have to try and submit you. And if I've done this every day, right, for years, then when competitions come, well, I've been doing it every day, 7 days a week.
Yes.
Whereas if we start separated, both of us standing, I might be hesitant to do something, you might be hesitant, and we never engage,
Uh-huh.
which means that the 5 minutes was wasted.
Yeah.
So it has to be done from a position because that's when the match is won or lost. That's when it counts.
Okay. Okay. And this is a big attitude. I want to share with people here listening also that the more we practice something, the better we get at it. And the easier it is to apply that skill, without much consideration. Yeah. It's not like you're not thinking that much when you're on the mat and you're in a combat. I mean, in 5 weeks' time, you will have to see all the training that you build up for this moment, how that is executed, I can assume it's under a lot of pressure. Do you feel the pressure or what? When do you know when there's a switch you have to turn on, right? Because you're not just submitting people on the streets if they suddenly do something. I mean.
That's a good question. I it's twofold, this answer. So basically, I look at it as this: I don't get nervous, um, not when I grapple anymore. The thought of fighting, getting in the cage and having a fight, that was a little bit confronting, but I knew it was good for me. I'd start to even sweat and get an adrenaline rush thinking about doing it. Like, oh, Harry, would you like to fight in front of X amount of people in 5 weeks' time? I'd be like, oh, whew, well, not really, but I knew my soul wanted to do it. I knew it was good for me
Yeah.
because we forget that our animals, our household pets, are domesticated, but not nearly as domesticated as we are. They still sleep outside. They still, they still don't. They don't live to the standards which we live to in our comforts. And those comforts, they kill us.
Okay, that's a
They
good
will
point.
result in lots of psychological problems. So you must thrust yourself towards these challenges. Remember Ralph Waldo Emerson saying, always do what you're afraid to do. So
Perfect.
I have to live by that philosophy, and I get in there.
Yeah.
And I realize that, hey, look, a punch to the face, it doesn't actually hurt, but it's the thought of the unknown which is scary, kind of like a dog by a swimming pool reluctant to jump in, and we're laughing at him saying, oh, come on, do it. You've got
Uh-huh.
to look at us the same way.
Uh-huh.
The things that we're scared to do, they're
Uh-huh.
equally as pathetic, if not
Yes,
more. So
I
we've got to
feel
just do these things because it's good for us.
okay, so you have a tip for anyone who lets fear get in their way? You have a tip for overcoming that? You first have to identify it, right? You have to like, oh, it's actually fear I'm experiencing right now.
Yes, it's funny because we've got to look at fear from a rational perspective. Rationality will always be our friend. Anybody that is fearful in any sort of procedure will always be the one that loses in that procedure. A race car driver, oh my God, turning a corner, what am I going to do? And then he
Uh-huh.
crashes. But the one that is calm, collective, and taking things into consideration, he's
Mhm.
fine. Imagine a brain surgeon that freaks out halfway through performing brain surgery. Oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, this is too much pressure. So, in
Uh-huh.
other words, we can rationally conclude that fear is our enemy. It has a place and it should be controlled. Then it is our friend. As long as we're the master of it, we identify it, but we're in control.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's not your friend and it will stop you from getting better. And I've been able to rationally conclude that just through everyday examples.
Okay, so yeah, on a daily basis, just have a little, what do you call it, that an inner self-inquiry where we look into, hey, what actions do
Real world examples. I like to stick to real world examples. Like you put a ladder between two buildings 60 floors up, given there's no wind, etc., no other factors, you should easily be able to walk across it. You could if it was on the floor. It's the same thing, and that's why some people
uh-huh,
can just do it just effortlessly and with no problems.
uh-huh.
Um, and I
Or
think
speaking in front of a lot audience, I had a mastermind group yesterday. We talked about this. She was going to have a large audience of 1,000 people she had to, speak for and such. And she got a little bit intimidated by that. But we had to keep in mind rationally that, hey, it's not really a bigger difference than to having this one-on-one talk, except for you're just
exactly.
having a look at, 1,000 people and sharing and you'll have even more energy because you have more eyes looking at you.
That's exactly right. We forget that everybody is an individual. In a large crowd where you may feel alone, don't forget that every one of those people is an individual,
Yeah.
probably thinking the same lonely thoughts as you may be thinking.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at this crowd.
Yeah.
Times that by however many number of people there are.
Yes.
The
And
atmosphere is created by the accumulation of the people, but
yeah.
not the individuals. The individuals are just individuals. So yeah, don't I would yeah, exactly right. I wouldn't be worried about a big crowd. It's like this fight, oh, you're gonna let the crowd cheering and yelling get to you. Well, no, because it's just me and one person
Yes.
fighting. That's all that matters.
That's the
Cut everyone
mindset. That's the
goes head
focus,
up.
right? That's where you actually just determines that this is what I'm going to put in the world, regardless of what's happening around me. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I just try to stay as rational as possible.
That's
And
good.
I have ever since I was 17, 18 years old.
Oh, when you make that decision, that's a conscious choice of yours. I love when we make conscious decisions. We can always reflect back on, I remember mine very clearly when I stated, my values are having inner peace. I want to extend that peace and joy wherever I go. 2009, that decision was made in a very stressful environment. And I know that's when I made the decision. Okay, so then I learned from there's a lot of wisdom when we make a conscious decision. It's like all fears of not being able to do that before, they will show up, right? So we can look them in the eye.
Yes, and exactly right. Everything that happens is an event. we attach emotion to those events. That is why we can respond, and people can respond in so many different ways. I like to use the example of someone slapping me in the face. I can choose to be offended or say, hey, great technique. That was excellent.
Great technique.
I don't need to be offended.
If you're out partying and the guy who comes like trying, and you go like, "Ah, great technique, man," he's probably not gonna hit you again. Yeah.
You can respond in a multitude of different ways. And I think it's always best to respond in a way in which results in the least harm to your mental state and the other person's mental state.
Uh-huh.
I think that is the better option. For pain is something that we can definitely conclude is something we don't want to feel. Emotional pain, we all ear towards happiness. There's very few things in life we can totally conclude as right and wrong, but it is definitely one of them that we want to be happy.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I've never heard someone who says, "Oh, I don't want to be happy. I just want to hurt myself." I've never heard it, except when people actually believe hurting themselves will create more happiness. You can have a distortion, but that's
yes.
with an emotional attachment to that will bring me more happiness. There's a belief that if I hit that guy, that will bring me more happiness. But you will soon experience that actually just bringing happiness, bringing that attitude towards whatever comes your way. That's a happiness within, right? It's an empowerment.
Yes.
I like that attitude. Keep that, Mark. So we want to also keep this a little bit short, so too late for that. I want to hear that vision of yours. You said something about world champion. You're going to have a professional fight. Harry, where are you going these days, man? What's going to happen? Where are we going to see you next?
Yeah. Okay, so I made the decision to get in the cage this year and just do it. Why? Because
martial arts. Is that mixed martial arts? Is that
mixed martial arts? Yeah.
Woo! I'm excited about. I love mixed martial arts.
Yeah, that's at the mixed martial arts. Because I figured, hey, look, it's crunch time now. I just turned 30, and that was a little bit confronting. I figured, look, I'll look back in 15 years and say, wow, I wish I did this. I know I will. It's just who I am. And I'll feel like I betrayed myself if I don't. What was holding you back, Harry? I'd ask myself. And it would be fear. Fear was the reason I didn't do it. There's no other reason. If you don't do it, something you wanted to do, fear was the reason. And I don't want to look back like that. I want to look back and say, hey, those were good years.
Yes.
I did what I wanted to do.
So the cage is up.
The cage. It's time for the cage. Yeah.
Are we looking into UFC? Are we looking into, do you know what direction yet? Or what vision do you have in mind? I mean, the reason why I'm asking you, and you might not work like that, but I know a Conor McGregor guy who had a vision about something. He took action, and there was a lot of money involved as well. He changed the business in a way. I see same potential with you, by the way. So I want to hear a little bit about where do you see yourself and how do you work on that?
I see myself fighting in Japan for sure. For me, it is more appealing than fighting in America. I love the Japanese. I just love Japan. The atmosphere that they create in their MMA fights, you can literally hear a pin drop, 60,000 plus people. Yeah. They've got a different attitude towards them, the way that they like to remain silent so the fighters can concentrate. It's funny. They're totally different to the American fans.
Yeah, the opposite.
Total opposite, yeah. That is my dream because my favorite fighter was from Japan. My favorite fighters of all time, Musashi, Fedor, and Sakuraba, all fought in Japan in the glory days of MMA, early 2000s.
Fedor Emelianenko. Are you talking about Fedor Emelianenko? Awesome.
Yeah, correct.
I love that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So they all fought in Japan. So for me, it would be like, yeah, a big thing for me if I got to fight there. So I will, because I know I can beat a lot of these guys. I've put in the work. I just will work on my striking at a high level now, and then there's no reason why I can't beat anybody.
Very good. Put in the work and the effort. Good. So that's the vision, to go to Japan, but you're going where are you fighting first here in 5 weeks? Where's that?
I'm fighting here in Sydney.
In Sydney, great.
but I will be going to Amsterdam on Monday to train kickboxing with Musasi, one of my favorite fighters, and that's basically how I like to train. If there's a component of my game that I want upskilling in, I will find the best person on the planet
Yeah,
with that skill, and I'll go there
very good.
because I know that if I get on his level at that move, then I beat everybody else on the planet in that one area.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how I like to approach my training. And yeah, I'd like to fight in Japan, but if I get a good deal to fight in the States, I'd love to fight there too.
And what weight class are you in? What are you? Are you going to do these extreme? Because in America, they're just about talking about doing extreme weight cuts that might not actually benefit that much. So people fighting in the 155-pound class, they usually go around what, 180, 190 pounds.
Yeah, so good question. I sit at about 100 kilograms.
Yeah.
I'm fighting at 93 kilograms. Now, at a
Okay.
competitive level, that is considered a pretty weak weight cut.
Uh-huh.
It is not a competitive weight cut. I'm doing that because it's my first fight, and while I'm in, until I'm in those biggest promotions, I'll just fight at 93 kilos, which is the light
Okay.
heavyweight division. But when I get into the bigger promotions where guys make more drastic weight cuts, I will cut down to 84 kilograms. So about a 15, 16 kilogram weight cut, which sounds pretty bad, but if you know your body really well, I know I can comfortably get to 86.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done it before a
Yeah.
couple of years ago. So 80, 84, a little bit of a sauna the night before, and it's always the day before weigh-in. The weigh-in's always a day. It was always before the fight, the day before the fight. So it's
Yeah.
not so bad. In jiu-jitsu, you have to weigh in on the day. So that's what they've done to implement strategies to stop people doing drastic weight cuts.
Yeah. Okay, it's an interesting approach. Yeah, because the many people we see that do the drastic weight cuts, but then after a while they move up a little bit and they actually have more fluid movements and more fluid. They can handle you know the punch to the face a little bit better. Um,
Yes, you don't want to cut too extremely. Feel what weight just naturally feels best for you,
uh-huh.
and then just play around with it. I mean, the problem with the heavier divisions is you take one punch and it lights out.
Yes.
If it's well placed, a heavy guy, 120 kilos. I mean,
Yeah.
you just don't want that force, that weight at your
Yeah.
chin.
No.
It won't end well. But the lighter divisions, it's less power, and you're better off cutting weight. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm excited to hear much more about your, fighting journey now. I'm so excited actually, Harry, and this is more like a friend than podcast actually, to see you. I want to come to one of your live events, and I'd love to also start visiting you in Sydney. Looking forward for that actually. Um,
That would be great.
yeah, I have my craft to work on here, and learning what I want to bring to the world and what I'm all about. So this is one of them, to see and bring, whatever people are doing and their passion on screen, so it can motivate people and inspire them to take action. So with that in mind, also, thank you very much for joining here on my
Yeah,
podcast.
thank you. It will be good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Definitely be good to see you again.
Yeah, and so you travel to Amsterdam here in just in the after the weekend, or how is it that?
Exactly. On Monday morning, first thing.
Okay, but that will be a training session, right? For how long are you going to stay?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Oh, interesting. So I'll keep that in mind. See my busy schedule. See, maybe something can come up. Do we have anything you want to add to anybody listening there? That might motivate them or inspire them. Do you have some words of encouragement, wisdom? The scene
I'd
is.
say start with in terms of getting motivated. Um, I personally believe that you keep things once again as natural as possible. So wake up in the morning and have a cold shower. These cold showers are just a great way to start your day, and it's a very easy first step. Right? They're never easy. Don't get me wrong, but it's an easy task.
Yeah.
As in, The shower's over there. What's stopping you? Well, fear's stopping you. This is a nice first test, first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Honestly, you just start with that and you'll find much more clarity and purpose in your days instantaneously. It's really quite phenomenal.
Perfect put. Well put. I like that. And that also, if anybody is into the Wim Hof method, I can recommend the Wim Hof method. He's all about ice showering and some breathing techniques
Yeah.
to help you out. Very good.
But anything which will bring you in touch with nature and those shocks. The body needs shock, needs to deal with those sort of those issues. It's good for it. It progresses it. Oh my goodness, the heart's racing. Oh God, here goes. Those moments.
Okay. And why
That's
not
how we.
start the day with a task of facing some fear and overcome that, and you're good to go. I like that.
Exactly.
Simple. Very good, Harry. I'm going to end it off here. Thank you very much for joining, my man. I'm going to talk a little bit afterwards here, but yeah, and everyone listening, thank you very much for being part of the channel here. Please leave your comments below on how you like this podcast, and I'll remember to ask a link from you, Harry, where we can watch the fight, and also maybe people are interested in learning about your Kimura's teachings. I know you're teaching as well still.
Yeah, so my Instagram's Harry Kimura.
Uh-huh.
I've got videos on YouTube. I sell a DVD online at bjjfanatics.com.
Uh-huh.
I've got my story on YouTube. You just put in Harry Kimura on YouTube and my story will come up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so feel free to chat with me on Instagram and watch my stuff on YouTube.
Perfect, and you'll see much more of this guy, I'm sure, because there's a world champion in the building.
Yeah, you'll definitely see more of me over the next few years for sure.
Very good, Harry. Okay, take care, everyone, and bye.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye bye.